welcome to episode 15 of the Bulls REKAP Podcast. I'm Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times. You can read me in the Chicago Sun-Times, obviously, and you could also follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at @JCowleyHoops. Follow at your own risk. So one of the things that probably not talked about, and maybe a lot of fans don't really care, when you have a beat, there's a chemistry. I mean, they become your family. They become your dysfunctional, away from your real family. And so, for baseball, I had, Merkin and Scott Greger, Doug Padilla, Mark Gonzalez. And then I got switched to basketball, and it was Casey Johnson and myself and a lot of people coming and going. And then it was about 4 years ago. This young lady was sitting down next to me very quietly. I did not know how we were going to get along. I'm not going to lie. There was a big age difference. And my wife kept saying, remember, you have daughters. And, I kind of am stuck in the 80s like Johnny Lawrence from Cobra Kai and probably say some things I shouldn't be saying. And I could not have asked for a better fellow beat writer, person that we travel with, than Julia Poe from the Chicago Tribune. So let's bring in Julia.
Oh, what an intro. Thanks, Joe.
Is that the greatest intro ever?
Beautiful. I'm like getting emotional over here. Damn.
No, I mean it. I mean, you never know how people are going to fit, especially at the pro beat where you're traveling so much. And even if people have different travel, different flights, different airlines, whatever, we all still see each other. We're all still this goofy little family that goes all across the United States. And when you get along with the people that you are doing this with, because I was on the Bears beat it was like the worst 3 months of my professional career. Everybody hated each other. You clicked. It was like high school. So when you have that compared to something that's really good, it's just night and day. And so you have fit really well into our little crazy family. So that's just you being you, Julia.
I appreciate it. And I was coming in from Orlando and coming into like a big market first NBA beat. I was quiet because I was scared out of my mind those few like weeks and months that I was on the beat, and it's been a really smooth transition, which I can't believe it's been 4 years. I mean, that's gone by just
It's gone by. Yeah. It's funny. So when you first came in, I don't know if I've ever asked you this, do you like prep yourself and say, well, what are these guys on the beat like? Do you talk to other people, or do you just kind of just go in and just say, I'll figure out what they're like?
Well, it was hard. I tried to do that a little bit, but I came in 2021. I started November 1st, 2021, and we're in such a weird point still with the pandemic, with like how much we were even allowed to be around each other. Right. They had that weird second surge, like a month into me being on the beat, and all of a sudden, like, we're not around each other. We're, half of us are sick or at home or, doing different things. And so I think for me, it was a lot of just trying to figure people out in the little spaces where we were actually able to kind of, actually interact with one another. But it took a minute for me to figure it out, just because it took a minute for me to actually like see anyone's face ever in person, just because that first year was so strange and different.
Yeah, that was a wanky season. All right, so what the hell is this team doing? If I were to just ask you this point blank question, what is this team doing in your mind? And do you agree with what they're doing?
I think I agree with what they're doing right now more than I have in a while, which is a good feeling, just in the sense that, I'm glad that they have at least taken a few of the steps necessary, made a few of the trades necessary to kind of, I don't know if you want to say get the plane off the ground or like crash land it or some combination of the two, right. But it does at least feel like they're taking a direction. I mean, we've talked about this so often. I'm still very confused about the direction in terms of them trying to get into better draft lottery position. I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. I struggle, and I'm curious how you feel about this, but I just struggle to really get a sense of how much all this front office values the draft. It just feels like they don't really think there's value in it.
I don't think they take much credence in the percentages, the small percentages. I think Arturis looks at them as so minimal that there really isn't a big percentage between whether you're one of those top 3 worst teams and you're 14% or you're 8 or 9 and you're 7.2 or 6.3, whatever it is for one. I think they view that as so minimal and that you're all shooting for luck that there's no reason to hurt your winning development, because I do think that is a skill. I'm not going to say that's not a skill. That doesn't mean, and first of all, I disagree with that. I think when you in a draft like this, where to me there's a clear number 1 and then there's a clear 2 and 3 that are interchangeable, and then there's a drop off. You want to buy as many lottery tickets as possible, and everybody's got a small chance of hitting it. I get that, but you want to do everything you can to have the best chance of saying, hey, at least we try. And they may get lucky. They may hit Cooper Flag with finishing 9 or 8 or wherever they end up. And Arturis, I'm sure, will give us that I told you so look. But to me, when you are looking for that dude, you give yourself the best odds possible. And I don't think Arturis values the numbers because they're so close together.
Yeah, I think one of the words you use there really sticks out to me of luck. I think the Bulls front office and Arturis specifically approach draft lottery like it's luck, not
yes.
You can improve your odds. Like in gambling, there's always luck in it, but there is a way to give yourself better and better percentage points, and that is just like very mathematically obvious. And it feels that they view the whole apparatus as a luck thing. And I have heard executives with the Bulls reference Derrick Rose before, and the luck that they had to jump in that draft. And that's just not the way that you can be managing a season like this one, especially with the odds that this lottery has.
And it'd be one thing if you looked ahead and you said, okay, this draft is really good 1 through 3, 4 through 8 are more of need picks, but could find some pretty good guys. But you're drafting more for your need in that spot because there's some interchangeable. After that, 9 through whatever, do you develop the guy the right way? If it was just that, and then next year's draft class was unknown or mediocre, that'd be one thing. But that draft class is shaping up where that thing could be lethal too. So you could get out of this crap of mediocrity in 2 seasons. You could set the stage in 2 seasons if it's done right and if the stage is set right. Like a team like Washington could hit. I thought they drafted some pretty solid pieces this year that are just pieces. None of them are stars. Sarr and guys like that, Carrington, I believe. But if they go boom, boom, and hit, all of a sudden you don't have to mess with the lottery anymore. Now you could start talking to free agents saying, look what we have here. Look at these young guys we have here that you can come help. And I just don't know if they see that plan and understand that plan. And it's funny because Arturis, and you've been in some of the meetings, off the record meetings we've had with him. And before this season, his big scapegoat was always like, well, I don't want to be in the draft lottery every year. Look at Detroit. Okay, well, let's look at Detroit now.
You take a nice little.
Yeah. There were misses. There were key injuries. But right now, you look at Detroit, whose roster would you rather have right now? Detroit's or Chicago's? It's not even close. So, it's confusing.
It's very confusing. It's even more confusing to me also after they crushed the draft last year. Like, they did a great job. Matas, a really excellent pick. He fell way lower than he should have probably. They did a nice job with him. Great development year. There's absolutely no reason that this season – this reaction would make more sense after even like a Dalen Terry year, certainly after what happened with Patrick Williams. You can look at those and be like, okay, well, the draft is not working for us, but like they did well last year. There's no evidence to prove that they couldn't keep doing that and keep getting nice little gems, nice little centerpieces.
And it's funny because the other day in the pregame, when we were talking to Billy, the last home game, and one of the things Billy talked about is the draft, how it's an inexact science. And I get that. And I think that's why there's so many misses the last 10 years compared to 15, 20 years ago where you had film for a couple of years on a guy, or you felt really good on a guy, or you saw a guy, you knew his name and you knew more about him. There were storylines, kind of like we're seeing in women's college basketball, where there's storylines and you can look and say, yeah, that's going to translate to the WNBA. That's going to translate to the next level. The NBA, I understand it's a lot more of a coin toss, but isn't that your job? That's your job to say, do we believe this translates? And are my scouts telling me we feel good that this trait will work for our system?
Right. And shouldn't that also translate into a higher volume of attempts? Like if it's an inexact science, you don't want to only be trying it once or twice. You want to go in and try to get it through the aggregate and be like, okay, we can afford a couple misses because we've gone and we've had good picks a couple years in a row. And they're, like you said, they're in a good position to do that. And they're just not following the formula for some reason.
All right, this summer, they've got a lot of decisions to make. We're going to play keep or move. I'm going to give you a name. You tell me if you would keep them or move them. Ready? Vooch.
Move.
Unmove him. Get him. Let Vooch chase a ring. Vooch deserves that. He's already signed a contract, but still, movable contract, Lonzo Ball.
Move for the right price. I'm cool with giving Lonzo through to next deadline as well. If they've got a little bit more wiggle room on that one, to me.
Yeah, I like that. Going to the next deadline with him as a possible piece, or even into that summer. Give him 1 year and then okay. Modest.
Oh, keep.
Zach Collins.
Oh man. I've seen that man play so little basketball still. I mean, I think I'm good either way. If you can move him for something, go for it. I think he'd be continuing to look younger at that position, honestly.
I would have said definite move if you could, obviously. The Philadelphia game, he showed me a little something where if you move Vooch,
yeah,
Zach Collins is the perfect guy to keep around to make sure that you look really tanky for 26.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good one, Io.
I think that if you get a solid enough offer for Io or Kobe or any, I'm sure those are ones that are coming up, I say move him. However, out of that young group that I just mentioned, he's like my primary option to keep. I think he will stay the most affordable. And I also think that like he's very bought in. I'm actually writing about this week. He's very bought in on like, the leadership aspect of being kind of like that dude for Chicago.
Right. Yeah. No, I like that's a good one because I like he and Kobe. I won't even bring up Kobe now because they're the same sentence. They're not redundant players, but they're redundant contracts where they've both outplayed their contract. And if you're going to keep this next name I'm about to give you, then you probably should move off Io or Kobe. Josh Giddey.
Let him test the market. What I think will happen is that everyone will lowball him, and you will have a very, very affordable contract match if you want to do that.
I was trying to figure this out the other day. I think Will Gottlieb and I were BSing. I think there's only like 3 or 4 teams that could actually make an offer where the Bulls would have to go. I feel a little uncomfortable with that. No one else can. There's just not a lot of money this offseason. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. Julian Phillips.
I say keep. I've liked what I've seen from Julian this year. I say keep.
Yeah, he's got some interesting traits. Herter. What did you think of Herter?
I say move if you can. I think that the streakiness is really concerning. I mean,
Jalen Smith. Oh, he looked great in Philly. Yeah. He looked great. And he wasn't just a shooter. He actually looked. That was the first time I said, "Okay, dude's a basketball player."
Yep.
Dude's doing more than just sitting back there. Jalen Smith.
Cheap.
Yeah, cheap. Great backup. Dalen Terry.
I don't think they're going to be able to, but I say if you could move him, if you could package him in with a trade, I'm cool with moving him.
the way his minutes have been cut down, I think Dalen would like to be moved too, to be honest with you. P. Will.
Move if you can, as soon as you can. He needs a change of scenery. The Bulls need a change of scenery. That just it has to come to an end.
It's funny because when you talk about him, were you around with Lauri Markkanen, or that he was gone already?
He was gone already.
Okay. So, Bulls fans like to rub the front office's face in, oh, well, look, they gave up on Lauri Markkanen. But here's what fans don't take into consideration. Lauri Markkanen was not going to be Utah Lauri Markkanen unless he got off the Bulls. And then he hit – so because now all of a sudden as a young guy, you're like, oh, shit, this team that drafted me doesn't really value me anymore. They send me to Cleveland. Then he goes to Cleveland, and they go off of him. So at that point as a young player, you're asking yourself, what do I want to be? Do I just want to be a guy that floats around and makes his money until finally that money runs out and the interest from teams run out? Or do I want to be a guy that says, this is my profession. I'm going to start taking it seriously. I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to have the right attitude. So you got to hit rock bottom for some of these younger guys. And to your point, I think that's where P. Will is. I'm not saying P. Will can't go somewhere and be an all-star. It's just not going to be here.
Absolutely. No. And I think with someone like Patrick, where we've seen his potential and the capability that he has to perform at that high level that you talk about, this is a mental fix. And a mental fix cannot happen in the place that you were drafted, in the place that you keep getting injured, in the place where you've just never been able to find your footing. Like, it's not going to happen in Chicago. And I think the only way that he will ever even be able to kind of look at Chicago fondly is if he is able to leave in the next year and a half and kind of become that next version of himself. I just think it's going to get like sour if they cannot figure this out in the next year and a half.
All right, here's a tricky one. Keep or move, Billy Donovan.
It's a great question. I have talked before about, we've talked so many times about how what's wrong with the Bulls right now is not coaching, it's the front office. That being said, I think you keep him for the summer. I think that if they ever flip the switch into a new generation, I think that making a coaching change at that time would also be okay. I think it's good sometimes to just make a clean break and build with someone new and not have all the old trappings and hangups and disputes that you were the player 3 years ago hanging around.
Arturas Karnisovas.
Move.
You know what? It's unbelievable that we are to the point where this guy came in, took a little time to survey the land, and then went guns a-blazing for a year. And was probably the most well-liked executive in the town at that time. I'm just trying to think. At the White Sox, it wouldn't have been them. No, I think he probably was the most well-liked executive or the one that was thought of the highest.
Yep.
And look where we are now, just how quickly people have lost faith in him. They've just kind of just said he's not the guy we thought he was.
No, it's interesting too, because since he made all of those moves at the beginning, it opened him up to make a lot of other savvy moves in the years after. Like, there were opportunities and windows to move off contracts, to just sign smarter deals with re-signing players.
Right.
And I think it's just the consistency of every time that he has been kind of presented with an opportunity to make a choice, that choice has felt like it's either been overly hesitant or rushed and never in the middle. Like, it's fast or slow. And I don't think you can keep operating that way. And he's lucky, honestly, that kind of the attendance and everything hasn't fallen quicker. We're starting to see that. So I think that is about to start turning.
Yeah, I think this is a mammoth, because he's not going to get fired, but this is a mammoth, because I think the extension is next year and the year after, if I remember correctly. So I think his extension is, not that that matters in Jerry's world. If Jerry wants to move off a guy, he's going to move off a guy. He just doesn't move off front office people very, very often. So But this offseason and through the first half of next year trade deadline is mammoth for Arturas. I think of all the names I've mentioned, his butt is on the hot seat the most, and that includes players because, he's the architect of this, and the blueprint has been very faulty.
And I think also part of it is the way that the Bulls front office, kind of the reputation of that entire group has been affected during his tenure. I mean, you and I talked to executives and folks around the league, and the general consensus has been pretty negative in terms of there's a broad lack of understanding from the rest of the NBA about what the Bulls are trying to do. And I think even compared to what that looked like in 2022, there was a lot of empathy around the league in 2022 at kind of when they crash landed out of that season, just about like, oh man, that Lonzo injury sucks. It sucks that, Zach got hurt. We'll see what they can put together. But man, like, look at what's happening. And you fast forward 3 years later, that empathy is eradicated. That it does not exist anymore. Just a lot of confusion and a little bit of almost contempt from the rest of the league about just what they're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, that's contempt's a really good word, because when you talk to people, it's almost like, we can't, well, what have you heard? What, this, we can't get your guy to want to do this. We can't get your guy to show his hand on this. We can't get and when that becomes your reputation, teams just don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have that. Your assets aren't that great. You don't have a lot of draft assets. You don't have players that people are making a big line to get to. And at some point, they're like, you know what? You're difficult to work with. So, if I go to you, I'm moving on. So, the thing about you that I like, and we've talked about this, you also are moonlighting in the summer for WNBA. And I've talked to Annie, our WNBA writer, and talked to you about this. The WNBA, I don't think people realize, but I think the WNBA is going through a mammoth. It's like a teenager that's hit puberty. It's going through a mammoth in your feelings and this and this and this. And for years, they've begged to be covered like a real professional league. And now they are. And the one thing, at least in talking to Annie and talking to you, there's pushback now where they don't necessarily feel like that you can be as critical as you are when you're on a different beat and stuff. Are you surprised that we're at this point? Do you see that changing? And how do you kind of compare and contrast the two leagues right now in your mind, since you do jump back and forth?
I'm not surprised at all, because I came into this space as someone who, I would sometimes hop on the odd Sky story the first year or two that I was on the Bulls beat, and typically just parachuted in for the big stories. And I think that's the kind of coverage that the league has gotten really used to, which means that, once a year, having someone come and talk to your fans about how inspired they are by their favorite player. You do one big feature on how inspirational the star player is. You follow their playoffs run a little bit, and then that's pretty much it. And that's like all the newspaper coverage that they're getting, because newspapers don't have big budgets and not employing people full time. And so you get used to, for lack of a better word, fluff coverage. And I think even just it's fun, because sometimes I get into a practice and I pull a player aside for a one-on-one and I start talking about, how they can start on their strong side defense better. And they kind of light up, because they're not used to that being the conversation at all. They're used to people parachuting in, asking, how great is it to have a league and then getting parachuted right back out. So I think the growing pains that come with that don't surprise me at all. I think that if you're not used to having anyone talk ball with you, you're also not used to someone being like, hey, why are you doing your job poorly? In terms of executives, players aren't used to someone maybe clipping a little package together, being like, hey, these are some of the things that I worried about, or things that I want this rookie to work on. So I'm not surprised by it. I think last year was a huge growing pains year. And I really do hope that this season, and as we just kind of get, especially for myself, as we have more resources at the Tribune to be covering the WNBA, I just kind of hope that we can start massaging some of those issues out and getting into a little bit more of an equilibrium. And I've seen that definitely on the individual player side. Like when I talk to players, I think at the start of last season, if I asked them, hey, I've noticed you do XYZ thing in a game, why do you do that? That felt like a threat at the start of last season. And by the end of the season, they were like, oh yeah, let me break this down. So I'm hoping, really hope that is the growth we keep seeing. But I think the defensiveness just came from never getting asked those questions at a high school, collegiate, or pro level. And then all of a sudden you've got, 20 cameras at your practice because you signed two of the most famous women's basketball players in the league. And, it just, the jump, I don't think anyone was ready for that.
I mean, that's a great point. I didn't even think about that's why there was, so much. I'd say the last couple of years, at least from Annie's perspective, there was, and I don't want to speak for Annie, but there was drama that, when you have people like yourself or Annie that are doing the WNBA, but also are coming from places of the criticism bar is set here. When you're covering an NBA team and there's a certain bar that guys have to deal with. And for the most part, they're used to. And I'm hoping that the WNBA, because the storylines are fantastic. I mean, the storylines coming from college to the WNBA are great. And I don't care. People can say, well, male, female. I don't care. You give men a good storyline, it doesn't matter. You watch WWE, they don't care if a woman's wrestling or men's wrestling. If the story is solid and they're selling it, they will follow it. So the idea that, men won't follow the WNBA is BS. If you give us a good storyline, like last year's storyline, it's great. I mean, you have to watch. You have to watch.
Yeah, no, I think, another difficulty with it is that since the dub is newer and since their most famous players are younger, this is the most social media forward league probably in the entire United States. So much of what they do in terms of even their media access is on camera and for socials. And a lot of times it's partnered content. A lot of the time they are getting paid to do 50%, sometimes 80% of the media availability that they do in any given week is a paid promotional partnership where they might be getting interviewed by, an actual interviewer, but they're doing it in a partnership with McDonald's or with Athleta or something like that. And so they see that as part of their business model. And then when we come in and we're like, no, we're going to do a free, unpaid sit-down interview, I think sometimes getting their head wrapped around the idea that is important and valuable is really difficult. And for that reason, I was really touched. Diane Taurasi announced her retirement yesterday. I was really touched that she did that in Time magazine with like a huge 5,000 word sit down multi-interview feature. I'm like, that's the stuff that I really hope we keep emphasizing because it's so important to use socials to get to young people and to kind of connect with everyone. But that kind of editorial investment, I mean, that is so important to what we do. And as writers, we're biased to that. But I think really helping people understand and emphasize the value in that kind of written coverage, that kind of free, unpaid coverage, that's so, so important to like actually getting the dub into kind of that editorial space that you're talking about, where they can handle all different types of criticism and coverage and can come out, positively with it.
So you've got 4 years of Bulls stories to look through. What are your favorite stories you did?
Well, I'm really proud of last season. I spent most of the season working on a feature about Kobe White and his family, leading up to the Most Improved Player award, which he did not get. But that was really meaningful. You and I have worked with Kobe for a long time now. He is he's a pretty private guy, despite how open he is with us about some things. He's pretty private about his family. So being able to kind of get in and see a little glimpse and, like get baby photos of baby Kobe from his mom and stuff like that. That was probably the most meaningful thing I've been able to do. And it was really fun in an otherwise kind of, just mediocre season. That was a real highlight.
Do you like writing features? It seems to me you really like writing like everybody's got their KC. The one thing I'll always say about KC, there is no one better I know at dotting I's and crossing T's in a story and having meticulous details. And he's just a pro's pro. From what my take of Will Gottlieb loves the not the science behind it, but he loves the architecture of a team. He loves like kind of the numbers. And I'm not saying he's like just analytics, because I don't think that's it at all. But he understands the game, but he looks at it very like multi-dimensional. My take from you was always that you really like features, and that's just me guessing. Is that a fair assessment that features are something that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, definitely. I think the storytelling aspect of the job has always been my favorite. And I think for me, especially coming in as a newer NBA beat writer, my first ever NBA beat writer job, I had such a huge learning curve as well, just to go through of like learning you and I know there's so many intricacies to covering an NBA beat. You know so much about not just basketball, but the money of it, the trends of the league, and the storytelling part of it has always been the one area that I felt like 10 toes down, very confident in. And that's something that I really enjoy just as a writer, and can be a little tough when you're covering like a team that's not great, because people care less about features in years that are down. So I am always hopeful that the Bulls will kind of get up on a little bit of a swing so that people would really want to invest in some of those stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. People think that just because the tone from the media has been mostly negative, and not everything is negative, but people ignore the positive stuff we write, whether it's back in training camp where everything is rah anyway. But they don't understand that if the Bulls are doing well, we're doing well, the paper's doing well, because people in Chicago want to pick it up and read it still. So the idea that we are anti the team we cover has always been funny to me and ludicrous. But at the same time, we can't lie to the fan base.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and I think that the piece that readers, fans, whatever, don't get as well sometimes, this is not true on every team, but we work with these guys 7 days a week. The Bulls have a locker room of like really stand-up individual people. We're not rooting against any of these guys individually. Even when we talk about, Patrick Williams and his needs and the things that we would like to see out in the future, like Pat is a great guy. We would say that any single week. And so if there was ever a version of this team where these exact guys could somehow turn it around and go on a playoff run or something like that, we would be out here being just as happy as anyone else for it, because we work with these people as individuals and as humans. And I think, just like you, when people act like we're rooting against them, I'm like, look, we're the ones that actually go in and, see them while they're absolutely bummed out after a loss. That is not something that we are ever see. Some of these guys cry. That is not something I ever want to have to see again, but just the reality of it.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, to me, it's been such a good locker room to work with. It. If you do criticize a guy, like, I was very critical of Zach and mostly of the contract, which necessarily wasn't his fault. I mean, if someone's going to give you that money, you take it. But he's a guy that you can go up to and go, hey, I heard you're pissed at me. Let's hash it out, or let's talk about it. And for the most part, it's been like that for about 4 or 5 years, the locker room. There's been a few guys that have been a bit prickly, but they were always kind of like outside pieces coming in late or whatever. But for the most part, the main guys, the core, phenomenal guys to work with, stand-up guys. And if they have a problem with you, they seemingly word will get back to you somehow, and you seemingly can approach them and work it out, which in this profession, that's all you could ask for. If not, it just becomes a pissing contest of staring across a room at someone. You don't like him, I don't like you. And, I went through that with a couple guys, and it's been a long time since I've gone through that. And it just makes life easier when you are dealing with guys that are so approachable.
Oh yeah, these guys, if you give them hell about their favorite football team, they'll just holler at you from across the locker room. They don't care.
I thought the funny moment, I don't know if you were on this trip or not. It was early in the year. It may have been Atlanta. I don't know if you were there. And Io, and if people don't know Io, his personality, Io is he's kind of quiet, kind of a dry. He's funny as hell, but
Funny
he's a
as hell.
shit stirrer. He loves to
Mhm.
stir it up. And so the locker room was all quiet. I was waiting for Zach, and I was just standing around. All of a sudden, I was like, "Hey, Cowley!" Everyone's like at the locker, either in a towel with their feet in tubs or about to go shower.
Mhm.
I go, "Yeah, what's up, Io?" He goes, "Who do you hate more, the Bears or us?" and everyone's like, "Oh!" Everyone's looking at me. Well, what's your answer? And
Yeah.
I go, Io, that's a really good question. I was going to play along with him. I go, that's a good question. I go, probably and I gave him that long, and I eventually said the Bears, and then I had to tell him. Joe Cowley doesn't hate anybody, which is
No one on
not
this
true because there's things I hate. So, all right, before I get you out of here, I'd like to do the interrogation room. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You just give me the first answer that comes to your head. If you feel like you have to explain it so you don't get in trouble, feel free to do so. But no, it'd be painless. TV show right now that's a guilty pleasure.
Oh, Below Deck.
Oh, with the Australian captain?
No, the one that's in Med. We're doing Med.
Oh, Mediterranean. Okay. All right. Yeah, I've got all kind of guilty pleasures like that. I'd give me the money and the exact years you would attach to Josh Giddey and you'd go to sleep tonight feeling good about that.
210.
Oh, you underbidding him. Oh, okay. I like it. How many books, if no one knows you, Julia reads more books than I've probably ever picked up. How many books have you read this season, do you feel like?
I tracked them, 11. Oh, this season?
Okay. Yeah, the whole season.
This season, probably like 25 to 30.
That's great. All right, you could get rid of one faction. Okay, this is the entire faction.
Okay.
The Kelseys, that means Travis.
Mm-hmm.
That means Taylor, his brother's wife. You get rid of the whole faction. Or the Mahomes. I know you love Patrick, but that means his wife, his brother, his dad. You're a big Chiefs fan. You get rid of the Mahomes?
Listen, yes.
They irk you more, I can tell.
The Mahomes family has terrorized Kansas City long enough, but the dogs get to stay. That's my main thing. Dogs get to stay. He has 2 beautiful dogs, so those stay.
Your firstborn. Doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. Doesn't even matter what sport it is. Years from now, gets one full ride, and that full ride is from UCLA. Do you let him or her go?
Oh, man.
You're a USC grad.
Yes, legitimately only because UCLA is also such a good educational institution, as much as that pains me to stay. If you were saying my like hometown schools and they got into K-State, absolutely the hell not. We can do better than that.
Okay.
But UCLA is a good school in terms of education. Everything else horrible.
Okay. K-State grad, send all your letters to Julia Poe at Chicago Tribune. All right, Juju or Caitlin? Go. Got to pick one.
Juju.
Oh,
stick with my girl.
Okay, I like it.
Stick with my girl.
Worst finishing around the rim right now, Patrick Williams or Angel Reese?
Patrick Williams. Angel hasn't tried to dunk, so she has not missed one yet.
Okay. All right, a plane with the beat writers crashes on a deserted island.
Yeah.
We're including in this Joe, me, Julia, KC, Jamal Collier from ESPN, Darnell from The Athletic and also from Money Talks, Cody from The Score, Will Gottlieb, and Old Sam Smith. Out of that group, who's voted leader? Start there.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you think was voted leader out of that group?
That's a good question. I think KC, but I think he would just immediately start like doing leader things, and so all of us would be like, okay, that we will follow.
Who is the first exile? Like,
exile?
Dude, you can't stay here.
I don't think it would be permanent, but I think you would get at least temporarily exiled for a moment. I think tempers would go back down, but I think it would happen.
I think that's fair. I'd be like, hey, I think I could train this orangutan. And you guys would be like, no, he'll rip your face off. And I'll be like, no, I think I could train him and he could be our friend.
No, we would just have like a little like timeout like hut or something that you got
My own little separate island.
Okay. You could work on your own project, and then if you did train the orangutan, you could bring him back, but only at that point.
Who is the first killed and eaten?
I fear it would be me. I don't think I would do well in this scenario. I was going to say. I think this would be Yellow Jacket style. I don't think I would be killed. I think I would just die.
And we'd be like, well.
Yes. And at that point, I would have already told you guys, probably crying 10 times, that if and when I died, full ethical right to eat my body.
Whatever you need to do. Yep.
I would be like Javi in Yellow Jackets. That would be my fate.
Awesome. Julia, that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know I've wanted to get you on here, and I'm glad you were able to jump on. Taking a couple games off, so you won't see me for a little bit, but you will see me soon.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, Julia. Julia Poe from the Chicago Tribune. She's, I mean, just so I think they show the post-game press conference where you can hear us ask questions. I mean, her the last couple of years, just her questions she asks. I mean, she's just good. She just gets it, and so it's a great addition to the beat. So, all right, let's go to Cowley Island. Some people aren't going to like this visit to Cowley Island. Well, what do we got here? Mr. I don't get along with teams. I'm an ass ache. I'm a headache. Everywhere I go, I disrupt. Can't make it in Minnesota. Can't make it in Philly. Burns bridges. Destroyed heat culture. Jimmy Buckets Butler. 6-1 with Golden State. The team looks completely different. The Steph, Draymond, they all feel different. They're talking championship now because they got Jimmy freaking Butler. Let me tell you something about Jimmy Butler. I always hear because there's always KD rumors. Kevin Durant's going to get traded. Kevin Durant's going to get traded. And the thing about Kevin Durant, no matter what team he goes to, he instantly fits in. Maybe. You want to know a guy who instantly fits in and makes teams better wherever he's gone? Let's see. Got the Bulls to the playoffs. Left, Bulls have been on a shitter ever since. Goes to Philadelphia or goes to Minnesota. 13-year playoff drought? Oh, that's broken. Jimmy Butler helped break that. Goes to Philadelphia. Oh, one Kawhi Leonard BS bounce away from going to the finals, which they then would have won because Golden State was in wheelchairs by the end of it. Oh, that was Jimmy Butler. Oh, goes to heat culture. Takes them to the finals with subpar talent around him. Not once, but twice. That was Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler leaves Miami. How's Miami look right now? Jimmy Butler goes to Golden State, 6-1, serious threat in the West. I don't know if they can get out of the West, but they just have made the entire West interesting. So Bulls fans that like to poo-poo Jimmy Butler, Zach's better than Jimmy. That was a great trade in 2017. It probably was one of the worst trades in Chicago sports in at least the last decade, hands down. There's the rant. Now let's go to the list. We got our list. These are the 5 most exciting teams that are also very young. I mean, you look at some of the ages of some of these teams. Basically, these are the 5 teams that the Bulls would love to be in a couple of years. So I'm going to go 5-1, 1 being obviously the best of the young teams. Number 5, Orlando. Still not sold on them. They do got a lot of young pieces. Tobias Harris, I think, has been a nice, or it's not Tobias Harris. I think Banchero's back, so that makes them at least more of a threat that they have that all-star. But again, it feels like they're missing an adult in the room. But I'll put them at number 5. Detroit, number 4. Cade Cunningham, I voted him before 2 seasons ago. He was going to be the most improved player. Obviously, he got hurt early. He was out most of last year. That sucked, kind of took the organization back a year. But right now, I mean, they kind of have that look of they're 1 or 2 years of experience away and one guy away. Houston, kind of been a rough month for Houston, but at the same time, still young team. I don't know if Dylan Brooks was the right guy to add to it. I think he does bring an edge, but a lot of young talent. Number 2, to me, is the most well-constructed team, and they do have a couple veterans in obviously with Donovan Mitchell. But the Cavs, Mobley, Garland, I mean, those guys have kind of stepped into their own. I mean, just a smart, young team with that one elite veteran in Donovan Mitchell. And obviously the number 1 team, OKC, Williams, 23. Who else we got? Even Hartenstein's 26. SGA's 26. Chet's 22. Dort's 25. Cason Wallace, 21. I mean, you'd say, well, yeah, they're one vet away. They're not. They're here. They've arrived. Obviously, they have to show it in the playoffs, but that's what you strive to be. Make a smart trade, add young pieces around it, have young draft capital, use the draft to your benefit instead of being allergic to the draft and poo-pooing the draft. And look at that. You become an elite team in the Western Conference. So that's the list for this week. Again, I want to thank Ryan McGuffey for obviously the great production, Julia Poe from the Chicago Tribune. I am Joe Cowley, and I've got next.